So question 6b, which is the 2D array question, and if you are listening to this and you are year 11 in 2018-2019, you're going to want to check your marks for this question, because I think I might have marked this wrong and you may have another mark or two to pick up if you attempted this question. So good luck, I hope you have. So each delivery van has an ID, an identification number. Mileage is collected daily for each van, for every van. A two-dimensional array is used to hold the mileage information for each delivery van. Complete the diagram to show column headings and example data for this data structure. It's actually only 2 marks, which seems a bit harsh, but let's think about this. And I know 2D arrays are something that we only touch on slightly, and we haven't talked about them as much as we will perhaps before the summer exam, but now is a good time to talk about them again. This is the point of mocks. A 2D array is what we in Python is called a list of a list, okay? But there is a difference, okay? A 2D array can only hold data of the same data types, e.g. all strings, all integers, okay? Now that is different to a Python list, different to a Python list of lists. So in Python, what we would call a list of lists, which might be, we might have miles equals. Now we could have ID number, so it could be AS43 could be an ID number followed by 450, a mileage, okay? And then we would set, that would be one list, then we'd have another list with another ID number and a string, and we could have an integer there, and then we could have another list. So that's a list, and it is separated by commas. And what do I want? Numbers 3, 4. Okay, that is a Python list of lists. Okay, that is Python. It can mix up the data types, but a true 2D array cannot mix data types. Okay, so do not mix data types in a 2D array. Okay, now given that the computational thinking paper is going to be general rather than Python based, we are going to need to keep that in mind at all times when we're talking about a 2D array. Okay, so a list of a list, lists of lists, so essentially these are the rows, okay, what becomes the list, and then we have our column headings, which you don't put into your list. So we have no column headings here, we just would know that that was driver ID and that's mileage, driver ID and mileage, okay? That's implied somewhere else within the program. So we need some column headings and we need some example data. Now the data will go in these bottom 2 columns, and they must be the same data type, okay? And just because it's 2D, it doesn't mean you can't have more values, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You could have any number of values. It's just the fact that you have, it's a list of a list, lists of lists. So when I marked this for the 2018-19 Year 11s, I've marked this using the mark scheme, which just gave one answer. But actually, now having looked into it a little bit further, I think that that is not correct, that they've given an example without saying it's an example. And there are certainly other answers that you could have got. So I will remark that question for you if you want. It's a shame it's only 2 marks because there's quite a lot going on here. So we could have the ID number, let's turn that off, ID number of the van, and we could have the mileage, and we could have the day, okay? Now, in order to make sure that we don't mix up our data types, we've got to make a decision about what type of data types that we are going to have. Okay, so it says example data, so it makes sense to me that mileage would be an integer. Okay, so if that's an integer, that means that this would be an integer, so we'd have to have an integer between 0 and 7 maybe for the day of the week, and the ID number of the van would be an integer. Okay, so I'm going to have van number 12, van number 45, and that's going to be on day 2. So somewhere within the program, that information would need to be collected and collated. Okay, so the important thing is that you have the data types are the same. Now, I apologise for marking it incorrectly, but I've since looked at this, and they have given some additional answer. Okay, so candidates found this question challenging because of confusion between the 2D arrays and the lists, indicating by the mixing of data types. Okay, so this response here, where we've got delivery man, mileage, and ID, it's got only 1 mark. Okay, 1 mark for the column headings because that makes sense, but it didn't get any marks for the data because you've mixed up here. We've got a character here and we've got integers here. Okay, so this one has got full marks because we've got an ID number which is as a string. You can see it doesn't have quote marks on it, but it's clearly a mixture of characters. Mileage, you've used the word miles and then the driver's name rather than the ID. So although it possibly doesn't make a lot of sense to store miles like that, you've got full marks for that because you're not mixing your data types on a 2D array. This one is quite nice in terms of its thought about its data types: mileage on Monday, mileage on Tuesday, ID number, so it would get full marks. So I hope that's given you a little bit of an insight into 2D arrays, and I hope also that I can give some of you a few at least 1 more mark, or even 2 possibly, which would be fantastic. So that's the question. Let me think. Question 6B. Question 6B about 2D arrays.